Hey guys, Jeff with Whirlwind Family Farm. We're going to give it here a couple of minutes if somebody's going to tune in and catch us live here today at Whirlwind Family Farm. And yeah, looks like we are up and live and going. Coming to you from here in Central Texas, Whirlwind Family Farm. I'm Jeff, and we've had this farm here in Central Texas for several years. And I'll give you a warning up front. One of the things, I have a little bit of a disadvantage, and I always tell people whenever we go live, because I'm out here on my iPhone, some people when they go live, they have the advantage of being at their desktop and they can look at questions and answer them right there immediately. I'll try to see if I can see something on the screen. But if you have a question, remember, don't hesitate to put it in the questions at the bottom of this after this video is done. And I'll be able to answer those questions. Don't know that we always have the answer, but we'll try to answer it the best that we can. We always say, hey, we're not perfect here, and we don't have all the answers, but we do have some experience raising lots of different things in a garden setting. So let's see if we are, yep, I want to make sure that we're up and live, and looks like we maybe do have a couple of folks on now. But one of the things I like to address here at Whirlwind Family Farm, now that we've gotten into late November, almost Thanksgiving, and to me, it's when the garden starts to look its worst. Here in Zone 8, Central Texas, we still have things that are growing and doing pretty well. We have the advantage of having high tunnels, as you can see, one here on our east side, one on our left side. We have a propagation tunnel right there where we have a lot of our seedling starts, as well as part of it, we do raise tomatoes in there part of the year. So we have the advantage of having that cover. But if you look inside, I'll do a quick, take the camera over here to this east tunnel. If I can just get the camera down here where you can look inside, you can see there's beets going, there's some onions right there, a little bit of cabbage, there's some bell peppers that are towards the end of their life. And over there on the far end, there's some carrots. We actually have tomatoes over here in this west tunnel. I'll walk around there and show you. This is kind of a new thing for us with the fall tomatoes. It's kind of one of those things that happened out of accident last year. We left some cherry tomato, indeterminate cherry tomatoes in this west tunnel last year. We always rotate. One year we'll have tomatoes in here, the next year over there, and then we do cucumbers over here. So we rotate them back and forth. Gives us a little bit of advantage versus dealing with insects. So rotation I do always recommend, even if it's just a small area, if you can rotate crops around, and that's what we do in our high tunnels. But back to what I was talking about is that last year, just out of, we had some cherry tomatoes. My wife said, why don't you just leave them up? And I really didn't expect them to make it through the first or second freeze, which typically here in Zone 8 is around November 1st. This year we had our first freeze on October 30th. 2 years ago, I think we had it, or a year ago we had it on the 15th of November. A year ago we had it, 2 years ago was November 1st, November 15th, 2 years ago. So pretty much in that average. The first week of November is typically when I get our first freeze. So back to my original subject is I expected those tomato plants not to make it. Even inside the high tunnel, you still can get freezing temperatures, which will kill those tomato plants. Even though this is a high tunnel, we do get a little bit of temperature protection there, but it will still freeze inside of there. So my thought is, okay, we'll leave those indeterminate tomatoes up, and if they make it, they make it. Well, to give my wife credit, those little cherry tomato plants, I should say big cherry tomato plants, and I didn't even prune them. They were an absolute mess. I wish I had a picture to show you, but they continued to produce cherry tomatoes all the way to January. Finally, the first part of February, I took them down because it was actually time to start getting seedlings up and going again. So it taught us here in this warmer zone, Central Texas, that we can keep tomato plants in that cooler weather, and that's when our tomatoes typically do better, is in our early spring into summer, and then again they tend to do better in the fall when we start to cool down again. So I'm going to take a step inside this high tunnel to show you something real quick. And this is not my main subject of what I'm talking about today, but I just wanted to show you this. So from just an accident of trying to figure out what we were going to do with some plants last year, we have now put up 5, these are indeterminate cherry tomatoes. You can see they go up about 9 foot tall. They're trellised with a nylon line, if you can see that right there. And you can see we have been harvesting off of them about every 2 or 3 days and have had several, even a few for our customers, which typically in the past we did not have tomatoes in the fall for our customers. And we found out now, just from learning last year by mistake, going ahead and running those tomatoes in the fall, why not? It's spring in reverse. You're headed towards the freeze instead of away from the freeze. And tomatoes like that cooler weather here in this area because our summers are really brutal and hot. Show the same thing. We went ahead and planted a few big beef tomatoes. Let me flip the camera around here and you can see there's some big beefs right there. These are trellised as well. I harvested off of these a couple of days ago, so some of these have already been lightened a little bit because I've harvested. And let me come down here. So you can see they're doing quite well. And I will tell you, we've already had 2 freezes. And as the great Charles Dowding over in Great Britain, if any of you know of him, he talks about inside the polytunnels, inside the high tunnels, you can still have a freeze because this is plastic. It's not insulated. It will keep, we do monitor, we have a temperature monitoring system, and you can see on a night that's going to freeze, you won't get below freezing till early morning. While it may be freezing at 10 p.m. outside, in here it may not happen until 3 a.m. And that gives those plants just a little bit more of an advantage. And that's where high tunnels really do come in. They're going to give you a little bit more of that heating, preserving that heating during the day, less of the pounding rain. You're going to have less pounding of wind. This is Swiss chard right in here. And we have some bok choy right in there. So, and some bell peppers, some younger bell peppers right in here, radishes. So, just wanted to show you inside this high tunnel, and didn't mean to get off that subject of what I was going to talk about today, but these cherry tomatoes have been a really nice bonus for us. And if they didn't make it, no big deal. We planted them just to see how well they would do in the fall, and they're doing great. But my main subject today that I wanted to talk about is once you've had those first freezes, you're going to see some of the things that you've planted have now frozen down and basically becomes like a thatch or ground cover. And I will tell you, in my early days of gardening, I had a habit of keeping things clean. I like to clean things up, take them out, have a nice, clean looking garden. And I will tell you, many times that was a mistake. And I have learned through experience, if it looks a little unkempt and if it looks like things are scattered around on the ground, some thatch, things that have died, great. Because what that is organic material that's now going back into the soil, becoming a compost in and of itself. And I'll give you a perfect example. Here are some bunch beans, green beans, and if you look at that right there, it just looks terrible. It's brown, it's dying. But we knew that when we planted that. We knew that the freeze would catch these because we planted these mid-September. They really took off and started to do well. And as those of you who know, green beans produce nitrogen. And the last thing I want to do is pull these out of the ground right now. I want those roots to continue to break down, release that nitrogen back into the soil, and that's exactly what's going on. If you look closely, there's even some weeds in there that have started to take hold, and because there's so many green beans, it's tough to go in and hoe it out. But that's not a big problem, because when I get to the spring and I do finally clear this row, I'll go in with a stirrup hoe, I'll take those weeds out, we'll prep that bed. But the last thing I want to do is take any of this out right now because we're allowing nitrogen to get back in that soil. So the point of what I'm trying to say today is just because things are brown and dead and dying in your garden doesn't mean it's a bad thing. It's actually a good thing. That is, without being corny and saying it's stupid, it's the circle of life. is these things have produced their fruit, produced whatever they made, green beans. If it was any type of flowering plant, freeze gets it, now it's going to become actual food. It's going to become that source of compost going back into the soil again. And what we're doing with compost is we're feeding those microorganisms which turn around, break down that compost, and then in turn allow those roots to have the uptake. And that took me a long time to understand that. I always thought of compost is it's what's feeding the plants, and indirectly that's true, but it is the microorganisms that are feeding on that compost, then turning it into the nutrients, which the nitrogen, potassium, calcium that's being taken up by the plant. So that's the beauty of no-till, and that's why we're no-till, because we're disturbing that soil as little as possible, because as soon as you start to till, and I know a lot of you know this, as soon as you start to flip soil over and flip it out like this with a plow or in any mechanism where you're going down 3 to 4, 5, 6 inches, you're just flipping the soil up so it's going to dry out, and then those little organisms are going to die. It's going to kill them because it's dry, and they are the source of breaking down that organic material. So back to what I was talking about. Again, I have a couple rows here of green beans, which are completely dead, but they have produced nitrogen. They have now put that nitrogen down in the soil, and I'm going to come along probably either with, I can come along with like a weed whacker or something, cut these off at the base. You can do it by hand, that's a little bit longer. You can cut them off if you have a small garden, cut them off at the base, leave that root system there. And that's what it's doing. It's putting that, all of that nutrients back in the soil. I'm going to make a walk back towards, since we're live. And by the way, we are under a thunderstorm flood warning here in Central Texas today. So if I see a flash of lightning, we're going to cut off here immediately and go inside, because we're not going to stand out in the lightning. Not a good idea. So I'm going to show you another thing that we have planted up here in the north part of the garden that has one purpose, and that's to feed that soil to be a cover crop. And it's some sweet alyssum that we put in, it's been almost 2 months ago. And even though we're up to our third freeze, although it's been warm this center part of November, that's here in Texas, you never know. You could end up not freezing again until late December, although I'm guessing here probably the next couple of weeks we'll get a freeze. You don't know though. But if you look at that sweet alyssum right there, that's 2 rows of it. It still has not completely frozen down. There's still lots of blooms on there. And at some point, that's just going to be crimped down and we can actually plant into it, because it's going to become thatch. Just like it did last year and the year before, we did it over in some of our center rows. And it actually has done really, really well as a crop, as a cover crop. And it does well at providing nutrients once it dies, because it becomes its own form of living compost. I'm walking along, we had some pumpkins here. These were the cinnamon girl, and you can see these plants have all died back. We had to pull some of them out because they had a little bit of powdery mildew, but I'm leaving them right there because, again, as I said, it doesn't look great. You walk out into your garden, you see all these dead plants, and my natural tendency over the years was to go in and clean this out and make it, tidy it up, make it look better. And that was a mistake. It needs to be left. It needs to be left there so it can break down and provide that nutrients. So you can see those are dead right in there. And this is mustard plant. If you look all through there. Last year our mustard plants got a little bit taller, but it too is purely there as a cover crop. And I will come in, leave that root system in. And I'll say 2 things about that. If it is a nitrogen producing plant, you certainly want to leave those root systems in there. The other reason to leave root system in is root channels. Is in soil. Soil tends to get compacted. Rain can cause it. Just traffic of you walking over those rows each year, things can get compacted. And leaving root channels, leaving those roots there to go ahead and break down the soil, also allows that soil to be more loosened up and have those literal root channels of that crop from the previous year. So that's another reason to leave them in the soil. So just some thoughts. And I know I took you on a little bit of different subjects there, talking about our cherry tomatoes, talking about cover crops. But the main thing I want to tell you is, especially as being a baby boomer, I always had the tendency to, hey, you got to have things clean. You got to tidy up. It's got to look good. I'm going to get the rake out and make that garden look in order and look right. And what I noticed over the years, those market gardeners who were really successful did not have the most tidy looking garden, because what they were doing was allowing things to sit there on those rows and decay and provide compost, a living compost, back into the soil. And I'll tell you one more benefit, besides the fact it's keeping a soil that's getting healthier each year, is that we have to purchase in quite a bit of compost here each year because we just don't have enough material to go and make enough compost to cover this just about an acre piece of property. So we have it hauled in each year from a commercial organic operation that's about 100 miles from here over towards Austin. They bring it in for us each year. It can be quite expensive to bring in that certified organic compost. But the more that I can use a cover crop that decays and leaves that thatch, less of the commercial product has to be used. So it's saving money as well. So that's kind of my thoughts today. Guys, we appreciate you tuning in to Whirlwind Family Farm. Kind of a last minute thought to go live today because I just had those thoughts, and whenever I do, I like to pass them along to you. I like for my garden to look good, but I also like for those things that have been frozen to sit there. These are some of the flowers that my wife plants, zinnias and things. You can see they're completely frozen down, but they too are breaking down and providing compost back into that soil. So this time next year, the soil will be a little healthier, a little better off, because I wasn't trying to be, I just had a advisory pop up that we're under a flood advisory. That's happened a few times here this year. So back to what I'm saying is that by leaving that there, it just allows it to be healthier. And before I close it out today, thanks for finding our channel. We always appreciate when you like, subscribe, hit the bell for notification. We have a couple of great videos that we have released the last couple of days, just talking about various things in our garden. We've got one that's going to be released tomorrow or Friday, where we talk about it doesn't take a lot of space, it doesn't take a lot of room to really have a very productive garden for your family. So check that out. We'll have that released here maybe tomorrow afternoon. So you definitely want to hit that bell for notification when our next video drops. Hey, thanks again, guys. Blessings over you, your family, and your garden. We appreciate your time. Thanks for tuning in. Talk to you soon from Whirlwind Family Farm. Guys, have a great Thanksgiving.